BRISL is a Sri Lankan organization who focuses on BRI projects which accommodates cooperation and mutual benefits to Sri Lanka. This initiation marks the very first seminar in a series of BRI proposed seminars to be held in the coming months. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you, behalf of the organizers, and we appreciate you taking your time off your busy schedule during the festivities to join with us today. We are very fortunate to have prominent academics and industry professionals speaking throughout the 3-day seminar. So we hope you will find the program we have lined up for you to be fruitful and engaging. To kick off this morning's program, we are pleased to have Mr. Maya Mauran, the Honorable Director of the Belt Road Initiative Sri Lanka, to deliver the welcome address.
Good morning, everybody. Very warm greeting to all the participants and the speakers and the guests for the seminar. On behalf of BRISL, I am more than grateful to stand here and welcome you all to this BRI and the Better Future for Sri Lanka, the BRI Seminar Series 1. Firstly, I would like to thank to the Chinese Embassy and other Chinese enterprises who actually supported this workshop financially and emotionally to make it bring the benefits to the undergraduates from the Sri Lankan universities. This informative 3-day seminar and the field visit provide the participants with an enormous amount of information over the course and huge practical experience about strategic projects implemented through BRI in Sri Lanka and beyond, and provide prospects of the mutual benefits and win-win cooperation which Sri Lanka can attain by being a BRI partner country in the Southeast Asia. I am sure that you all will feel enriched with knowledge after completion of this seminar. Unfortunately, the Jaffna University students has been rejected to participate in this seminar due to various reasons, internal politics as well as the geopolitics. Our message to the parties who actually involved in this one, don't play with Sri Lankan students' education. And finally, I welcome you all once again for this seminar and hope that you all will have a great time ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Myron. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm privileged to invite our first guest speaker, Professor Samitha Hettige, to deliver the keynote introductory address on China's Belt and Road Initiative. Samitha Hettige is a professor of management with academic affiliations in Malaysia, Sri Lanka, and India, focusing on utilizing the BRI for conflict prevention and sustainable development. He served at ground level in 6 conflict-affected countries, researching conflict prevention. He was the principal resource person of the Belt and Road radio program, which was recognized as one of the most investigative programs at the Sri Lankan Presidential Media Awards 2019 and contributes to the Silk Road Story TV documentary series. Having studied 6 languages from civilizations that were partners of the ancient Silk Road, he has conducted relevant research at the Kennedy School, Harvard, Queen Elizabeth House, Oxford, and the Lester Pearson Center for Peacekeeping, Canada. His publications include Independent East Timor in 2001, Tajikistan without USSR in 2003, Reintegrating Ex-Combatants in Cambodia in 2009, Conflict Prevention, a Sri Lankan case study in 2014, and The Moon is Not in the Water in 2021. He is the chairman of Sri Lanka Institute of Biotechnology and was the director at Jinisena Industrial Parks and Univotech Ratmalana. Please join me in welcoming Professor Saminda Hettige.
Good morning to all of you. Thank you very much for the kind invitation, and thank you BRI Sri Lanka for organizing this very useful seminar to update the next generation, which I think is very necessary, especially in the case of Sri Lanka, because I believe that Sri Lankans generally forget. So they have to be constantly reminded. I hope you all will agree. Maybe you will forget. So let me start my presentation. I'm supposed to talk to you about the history and the origins coming up to the modern days. So I have selected a map published by the British bird watchers. It's in the web, you can refer to it. Why I selected that is, you see is it clear to you, all of you? Can we enlarge it? Can't, no?
Right. So the topic that I was given was to focus on China's development in the modern era. Now, when we use these words such as era, it's very important to understand what an era is. Right? We live through an era, we go through different eras, we talk about them in world history, we talk about them in the context of the passage of time, we talk about a golden era, we talk about a troubled time, we talk about a troubled era, whatever it may be. But we're looking at a period from the founding of China. And China was founded in what year? The People's Republic of China. What year? 19? And you're thinking, oh no, those from Colombo University are going, oh no, he's going to come up to us and ask us questions now. Yes, I am. That's why I moved away from the podium, right? And you might not sit here again, no, in the first row. Tell me, 19? 1949, exactly, 1949. Now, when we look at 1949 onwards, a period that we focus on a lot in terms of change in China is what happened in the last 40 years. Now, this is from the end of the 70s. That is where we saw massive economic recovery, economic change. The country was really propelled forwards. Recently, a Chinese leader died. Who was that? Who was the Chinese president who died recently? Right? I'm not going to repeat that answer. This is like me going for a forum once. It was a panel where they were giving scholarships to a certain other country in the Far East. And one of the members from that embassy was on the panel and asked one of the candidates who was going for higher studies in that country, who's not exactly very friendly with China, said, what are some of the investments we have gotten from that country? And that person said, the BMICH. And the member of that embassy was extremely unhappy about it. So yes, so that answer comes from that particular country, and it's not connected to China in that context. But who is the leader who died recently? Former president, you got the designation, very good. And name?
Dr. George, for taking your time to come here. I know you are very busy, and when I first proposed your name, even Maya said will we not be able to get hold of you because of your schedule, but you managed, you even sacrificed a lot. Anyway, so going back to, we will have a discussion, small discussion, and we'll open the floor to the students as well. So to start off, I want to, you spoke about the strategy, which is very important. So when you go back, Chinese first invented gunpowder, and it was initially taken to Europe through Silk Route, and few centuries later Europeans developed that and eventually took over Chinese Guangzhou areas using vessels, using cannons and all. So, how can Sri Lanka develop a strategy in the modern context? For example, in 1940s, Sri Lanka was much more recognized than China. So I remember during one session, there was a Sri Lankan who was in Beijing at that time. He said,
we want these things. We are not going to be satisfied with, today only a 2.5-hour power cut, so it's okay. No. There should be zero power. If you're an investor coming into a country and the power goes off, you're not going to invest in that country. Because you've got to invest more to ensure that there is a continuation of power in your factory, in your manufacturing plant. So these are detriments to investors. These are things that are affecting our country. We have to move ahead. We need a vision. We need action that goes with it. But most importantly, we need a national plan. You see, at the end of the day, I mentioned investment at the very beginning because we don't mind any investment. Anything come, bring anything and come. So rather than attracting any investment, we need specific investment coming in which is going to fit into our jigsaw puzzle. Let's make our puzzle. Otherwise it just remains pieces scattered everywhere. We are not putting the pieces together. Strategy on one side, national plan on the other, but also individually. We might think, okay, all of this is up to the leaders to do. What can you and I do? Who are we?
And Road Initiative and nature of its diplomatic relations with Sri Lanka by two esteemed guest speakers, followed by a visit to Huawei, Sri Lanka and Port City, Colombo, and ending day one with a team-building yacht party, which I'm sure was the highlight of the day for most of you. Now, focusing on today's agenda, first, ladies and gentlemen, it is my greatest pleasure in welcoming Dr. Vagisha Gunasekara to present on China's gifted projects and aid in Sri Lanka. Vagisha Gunasekara is a political economist, researcher, and policy analyst with over 15 years of progressive experience in academia and development research. Her research portfolio includes poverty, labor relations, land settlements and use, service delivery, national and household debt, and geopolitics. The geographic scope of her work extends from Sri Lanka to United States, Sub-Saharan Africa, and South Asia. Vagisha is currently an economist at UNDP, Sri Lanka. She works closely with the Ministry of Finance, Sri Lanka, and other relevant government institutions on innovative financing instruments in relation to restructuring external debt and international taxation. Please put your hands together for Dr. Vagisha Gunasekara.
Before we start, I know what time is it now? Is it 9 on the dot? 9:06. So we have 1 hour 15 minutes. I'd like somebody to keep time. Maybe about half an hour into the session, if somebody could prompt me. And the reason why I say this is because we have this interactive exercise at the end of this session so that all of you don't fall asleep listening to me for 1 hour, right? Am I going to do that today? No, I have a different plan. So China gifted aid, China gifted projects and aid. It becomes a very important part, the global political economy in which geopolitics play out. So I'm a political economist, you heard that in the introduction. So an occupational hazard of being a political economist is that we pay attention to shared histories between countries.
Nice to meet you today and good to see you, university students, although I don't think my students are here anybody. Have you, the picture here, you can see these. What are these things? That is the last days of Aragalaya. I don't know whether any of you were there. But anyway, there is a reason for Aragalaya. Professor, do you think that after our investors see these things, would they ever come to invest in Port City? What do you think? In fact, according to him, Sri Lanka already lost quite a number of investment negotiations because of Aragalaya that is in front of the port city. So we have a cost. What do you think? No idea?
As much as the debt trap, we'll talk about the debt trap as we go on. There's a lot of speculation that the debt to China is hidden. This is not only a phenomenon related to Sri Lanka. Globally, there's a discussion that some of the Chinese lending is not reported. In Sri Lanka, we can't speak for other countries because we haven't extensively researched about other countries. In terms of Sri Lanka, MIST tends to go on more technical note, and I understand that people often could get confused. So if you have questions, feel free to raise your hands and ask. So that's the clarification that we want to give in the beginning. Next slide. Now, we categorize Chinese lending to Sri Lanka into 5 different phases, right? Because we see between 1970 and early 2000s, we did not see much Chinese lending to Sri Lanka.
If you go to African countries, especially since the late 90s onwards, China has written down a lot of those loans. For Sri Lanka, that kind of loans right now is a very small amount, just $16 million outstanding at end 2021. Right? Writing that down is not really going to help us reduce our debt metrics or any of that. And most of that is non-interest, so it doesn't really have a debt servicing cost, it's just the repayment of those amounts. And most of them were given for certain development projects, such as certain hospital projects, etc. Right? The big amounts are with Exim Bank and CDB. And these are also relatively new institutions which haven't also have the experience of this kind of global debt crisis, global debt stress before. Because as I said, the Exim Bank was established in the mid-90s after the major 1980s emerging markets debt crisis. So there is no experience of handling this kind of situation before. So they themselves also have to go through, the learning experience, learning curve, and this is something Michael Pettis, who's based in China, is highlighting, that these institutions are going through this learning process, putting down their mechanisms of how to handle the debt restructuring. Because again, it's not just Sri Lanka that they have to deal with. They're dealing with Zambia, they're dealing with Suriname, they're dealing with Ghana, Pakistan is having debt stress issues, etc. So they can't just give a special package for Sri Lanka and help us out. Right? They also need to be aware how can the model that they use for Sri Lanka and in Zambia, how can it be applied to other countries without breaking bilateral relationship with those countries. Because they can't do special favors just for one or two countries as it stands. So that is why also in a way people are complaining China is taking too much time with debt restructuring, because they are also coming into their internal consensus. And the other side of it is there is a perception that because China's central government seems to have authority, that they can just make these financial institutions who have lent to Sri Lanka do what is required, right? But that is not the reality. Even though there is this perception that the Chinese government can do that, if you go to the next slide as well, most of these loans was not...
Before I read it, normally I read every day whatever the paper's out, but it has been shared by Chinese embassy. Yeah, we share the same paper in your group as well. And then Chinese embassy also posted about their findings, and then BRISL also posted the findings in their Twitter. And I have been contacted by few people and asked why you all are doing this one. This is about Chinese debt, and Umesh Antilna is saying Chinese loan is not 10%, it's 20%. We don't understand what is going on, why you all wanted to promote. So the message what I wanted to give here, that is mean, this is not the Chinese government or Chinese embassy or the BRISL. We are not lying to the people to say the 10%. This has been told by somebody, then people believe that, and we are not the people that told 10%. And we are happy to say that one. So it's a finding is 20%, it's 20%. So that's as the research found out. So which is the one of the fact that we wanted to tell them. And other thing is, these loans, as they found out from the research, what they found, that you all see that this has got a lot of complication. Why that Sri Lanka went for this Chinese loan, and why that we failed to make it this as a win-win. So that is a different subject. But however, so I will open this floor with the first question. So these loans, Chinese loans, is a big subject globally. So I know that I work in few African countries, and I know that Chinese loans are very common in Africa. So especially the part of the North Africa and East Africa I live. So it's a very common, and all the countries they are getting the loan. And I will give a quick example before I ask my first question. So I can remember when I was in Somalia. So there's a local radio is people are listening some news, and I can hear that only word is the US and China. They are talking in Somali, that discussion forum. Then I asked my interpreter what is going on, why they are talking about US and China. So the discussion is about US loan and Chinese loan. So what the people are discussing, why that people now wanted a Chinese loan. That answer was what they are giving is, if the US or the Western countries or even in India, if they wanted to give a loan, they will say it will take ages to get it. And if the China say that they wanted to invest, in the second day you will find the two Chinese are walking on the street. So this is the thing, because they give a loan very quickly and with less conditions. So then making that journey's benefit it's our responsibility. So I will open this floor with my first question. Now that Sri Lanka is in deficit and we default all these loans, do Sri Lanka still need to take loan, or without taking further loan, can we overcome this problem?
I'll give a very quick and brief answer to this. We can't. We need more loans because it's clear that we have a budget deficit problem, which means our government revenue is much lower than the expenditure. So you will have to borrow inevitably. I mean, think about your personal finances. If your expenses are more than your salary, you'll have to borrow. There's no way you're building a house or buying a car without it. The same goes to Sri Lanka. There's no way out without borrowing. But what we would want to see is more responsible borrowing in going future.
Thank you. And this is now...
because we did not develop our exports enough, we did not increase our tax revenue enough. So your point is very true. Then why did we go to issue sovereign bonds in 2007? Was because one reason, as we had the budget deficit, as I explained earlier, the funding from the loans from the multilateral banks, World Bank and ADB, and also to a certain extent from Japan, reduced after Sri Lanka was upgraded to a middle income country. Now the general global practice is that when you upgrade yourself into a middle income country, you gradually stop relying on concessional loans too much, and then you go and borrow this way. You go and issue sovereign bonds. Internationally we call it Euro bonds. Right? So this is something that most of the countries do. So the issue then is couple of things. One, are you doing too much? Are you borrowing too much? Which we did. Second thing is, have you developed the capacity to repay those loans? Which is, I think, the most important thing, right? Because when you are going through the middle income transition, you are supposed to be ready. It's like, think of you graduating from the university and then doing your own job, maybe potentially getting into a marriage, right? So you have to finance yourself. Your parents will no longer feed you. So you have to find a job. You have to find like a fixed source of income. You have to
you can't be, the chill or the easy outgoing child anymore. You have responsibilities now for.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you are feeling refreshed to continue with the second half of the seminar session. Now, let me take this opportunity in welcoming the next guest speakers of the day, Mr. Kanishka Chaturanga and Mr. Cheng Huashang, behalf of the China State Construction Engineering Corporation, CSCEC, founded in 1982. The CSCEC is now a global investment and construction group featuring professional development and market-oriented operation. It has moved up to number 9 on the 2020 Fortune Globe 500 list and topped Engineering News Records top 250 global contractors list. China State Construction has been doing business in more than 100 countries and regions around the world, covering investments and development construction engineering, as well as survey and design and new business. Its presence in Sri Lanka can be traced back to the Bandaranaike Memorial International Conference Hall, the BMICH, completed in 1973. Since 2012, they entered the Sri Lankan construction market, and by 2014 implemented the extension on Southern Expressway, Project Section 2 and Section 3. Currently, they are invested in many other construction projects in Sri Lanka, which will be discussed during the session. Mr. Cheng Huashang is the Deputy General Manager of China State Construction Engineering Corporation International, South Asia, a senior political engineer who obtained his master degree of enterprise management from Nanmin University of China. Since he joined CSCEC 19 years ago, he has been engaged in the management of construction industry in North Africa, Western Europe, and South Asia. Has a wealth experience in administrative affairs, corporate planning, localization management, especially cross-cultural exchange and brand management. He has also been actively organizing public welfare activities in Sri Lanka with volunteer services team of Ceylon Dream Makers and manages overseas construction under Belt and Road Initiatives.
As Sri Lankans, I have worked in several tunneling projects, but this is the biggest tunnel constructing in Sri Lanka, and as she said, 27.7 kilometers long, and there are 3 types of tunneling engaged in this project. One is TBM, tunnel boring machine, which is a new technology to the world. Actually, the TBM came into play around 1990s, but at this level, Sri Lanka doesn't have this technology, and we are lucky to have Chinese companies here in Sri Lanka and build tunnels which are very fast and so on. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, this is what is called a TBM machine, and this machine is on the site in Habara now. This machine can go around 21 meters a day. After all the supporting and the complete 21 meters can be dig into the ground. So this is to just to brief you. This is called the cutter head. which is the main part of the TBM. The TBM is around 180 meters long, and this is the front part only. The cutter head is the main drive towards the ground, which cuts the rock or even hard rock, soft rock. It is possible to engage in any geological conditions. This is let me explain. This is called the shield, which protect the machine and the people inside the machine. And this is, as I said, the cutter head. This is the gripper shoe. The gripper shoe is technically gripper shoe hugs the tunnel to get the force to push the TBM into the ground. So this is what happening from here, and this is called segments to support the tunnel in order to prevent the collapsing. So these are the segments, and this is what it looks like when the segments are placed.
Thank you, Kanishka and Mr. Chang, for the brief introduction of China State Engineering and its attachments to Sri Lanka. So yesterday we spoke about the BMICH. You all can go and research what happened in BMICH also. The same problem happened with Port City. The project was stopped and the government propelled and they continue again. So this company is one of the biggest companies in the world. You have seen the numbers here. And in Egypt alone, it's the contract value is over 50 billion. So it's a huge company. Their total contract values compared to all projects, it's the highest in the world. So one of the biggest companies in the world, and they have shifted to Colombo, and they operate the regional South Asian office in Colombo. Okay, so I want to point out there are 34 to 28 countries in the Indian Ocean rim which is competing against each other to get the benefits of BRI. And if we are not aligned or if we are neglecting, they would also move to other places. Recently, Tanzania changed its partnership to a strategic partnership. Also, Kenya is signing a free trade agreement. So those are also Indian Ocean countries. So what I wanted to point out is even the China state-owned Chinese state engineering company might move to Saudi Arabia or Middle East if they didn't see any potential here. So being said that, thank you for your experience. So I want to raise one question about, because he's a senior manager, and this is a SOE in China, state-owned enterprise, which the government owns around 40%. Lanka නිකන් ඉදිකිරීමේ engineering corporation එක වගේ ඒ රටේ තියෙන corporation එකක්. මේක පටන් ගත්තේ මෞත්සුද ඉස්සර පටන් ගත්තේ චීනේ හදන්න ගන්න කාලේ. So I told you yesterday there was a politician called Chu Rongji who reformed the SOEs in China and fired around 2 million workers, unnecessary workers. At that time, people were saying we want jobs and blah blah blah, but he didn't listen to the sentiments. He went forward. So these companies you see today, where they are biggest companies in the world. So we also having the same experience. Our SOEs are failing. It depends on what the initiatives we take now will reflect in another 20, 30 years where we'll be. So I want to ask from Mr. Cheng Hua Ching, probably a personal question. What are the challenges you face when you work in Sri Lanka, be it managing employees or government sectors, if you can share, or what are the areas that you feel that need to be improved in Sri Lanka?
You mean what's the challenge for us to...
As a Chinese company coming into our country?
First of all, I think the cultural difference, although we both are Asian countries, but sometimes I found there are still cultural differences. Yeah, Sri Lankan people is whatever clients or people. Very friendly people, I think. but sometimes it's still difficult for us to understand the Sri Lankan culture. We need to learn much more about Sri Lanka culture. Even our local employees, they cannot understand our Chinese culture. Yeah, because of this, sometimes I think it can be an obstacle. Yeah, but it's now from a long term. I mean, for a long term, we need to learn from each other about the culture. Yeah, like this, the company can be organized better, and we can make progress together with Sri Lanka employees, community, and the society. This is the first thing I want to express. And secondly, I think, as everyone knows, this year it's a very tough period for Sri Lanka people and even for us. Yeah, because we have so many projects ongoing in Sri Lanka. We even up to now, we are still insist on fulfilling all the tasks and all the contract to complete the projects as it stipulated in contract. Yeah. Up to now, until now, we any other how to say, none of the projects are suspended because of the contractor's problem. Yeah. It's really difficult this year for us. For example,